Hello, can you guys hear me?
Tabasco, good to see you again, man. Or hear ya. See and hear.
It's good to see you too. I'm excited for the space today. I was just before this, and actually, the topic of today's space is super interesting because, especially over the past few days and like the different spaces and podcasts that I've done, for some reason, this week has kind of been like the security week within the community. I've been talking a lot about it, and I think it's like a relevant topic because it's not that there's really been any large hacks recently. It's just that, and we'll get into it in a minute. But Chainstack has the last few weeks, especially as we've gotten into some security troubles ourselves, and it's been a good learning experience. So, anyways, we'll talk about it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the space today. I'm glad we could set this up.
That's awesome. Yeah. And yeah, no, sorry about the security issues, but lucky for us, it sounds like you went through a good learning experience and you can kind of bring some of that knowledge over to our community. So thanks so much for coming through and joining us for the space. I guess we still have like 10 minutes to go, but I'm down to like chit chat before we get started with the questions. Or actually, I don't know. What do you think, Affirmation? Should we hang out for about 10 minutes and wait for some more people to come through?
Yeah, let's give it a few minutes. Go ahead and just get the space warmed up, I guess, right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, if anyone wants to come up and ask Tabasco some questions about Web3 security and Chainstack, feel free to come on up and request the mic. I'll probably end up inviting you guys just to motivate you a little bit. But yeah, this is like definitely security is a big deal, and there's you could dive deep into many different aspects of it. So I'm glad we have Tabasco here to share some of his wisdom and experience in that area.
For sure, yeah. And I guess what I can do real quick while we're waiting and kind of getting the space started here is, I guess to start for anybody that is either in the audience or listening to the recording. I think most people that are in the audience right now, and probably most people that will be listening to the recording, are already familiar with myself and with Chainstack. But if you aren't, basically a quick rundown is that I'm the developer relations lead at Chainstack. So my job is to post content, video tutorials, articles, and do spaces like these, video interviews, Twitter spaces, stuff like that. So if anybody here is listening, is a developer and you want to chat about anything about the topic today, Web3 security, about building your application, whatever it may be, that's what I'm here for. My DMs are always open. I'm always happy to chat. So I guess quickly for like I mentioned, for those of you guys who aren't familiar, and we can probably touch again on this later, but Chainstack, just like this super brief elevator pitch, is that Chainstack is, we kind of call ourselves the leading suite of services connecting developers with Web3 infrastructure. That's a tagline that we use. What that actually means is that we do things like RPC nodes, which is blockchain. We do things like subgraphs, like various partner APIs, IPFS, stuff like that. So, foundational components of infrastructure that thousands of developers across the ecosystem leverage to create powerful and advanced Web3 applications. So this is what we do. Our position as an infrastructure provider and my position as a developer relations lead for a leading infrastructure provider puts me in a great place where I get to be hands-on with things like Web3 security. I get to work with a lot of auditing firms. Like, I've talked to Certic. I've even been on some of their the podcasts that some of their employees host. I've met with a lot of these, like titans of the Web3 security space. And also, like I mentioned in the beginning, which we'll talk about later, but at Chainstack, we've had our own pretty interesting experiences with Web3 security and best practices in that area. We'll actually be publishing this Friday a whole video podcast, about an hour, where we're talking almost exclusively about Web3 security. And we talk more directly, we talk kind of about the importance of feedback and application development. So like auditing and getting people to look at your application and test it, and multiple perspectives. But anyways, I'm already going on for it. So this is that's Chainstack, and that's what I do. So it should hopefully give us a decent sort of ground today for the conversation.
Oh man, yeah, I'm super excited. I can sense your excitement. I'm definitely looking forward to just diving deep. Maybe even getting into some definitions, so for the non-developers out there, we can define some of these things and get a better understanding of it. Um, and if you can, go ahead and retweet the space so other people can know we have Tabasco here, who's gonna just. I mean, I'm really looking forward to the space. You're bringing a wealth of knowledge, so yeah, if you can just retweet and share that, we have a lot of information on Web3 security coming your way.
I'm going to try to log into the Chainstack account here and get it retweeted. It's interesting. I use when it comes to it just crashed. There we go. When I do Twitter Spaces, I actually do it all natively on desktop. So most people, and really the extent of Twitter is that when you want to do a Twitter Space and you want to speak on Twitter Space in specific, you have to use your phone, right? You have to go on the phone, turn your microphone. And I did that for a long time. That was kind of my main way of doing Twitter Spaces, and I wasn't a big fan of that because I use a Samsung, like one of the newer ones, and it didn't work at the time. Like I couldn't do it. And since Twitter Spaces are like a big part of my job, is that I had to figure out a better solution. So what I've been doing for the past few months is like I have this Android operating system emulator on my computer that I use to basically launch like instances of Android devices. So I can install Twitter. I can connect my desktop microphone and use my headphones, and it's like an Android phone on my desktop. So that's what I'm using, and I'm going to use that as well here to retweet the space on the Chainstack account.
Nice. Just a heads up, your voice is coming in a little distorted. I'm not sure if that has something to do with what you opened up there, but
let me. All right, I'll retweet it, and then I will join and leave and join back. So 1 second.
No problem. No problem. How's everyone? I hope everyone's doing good in the audience there.
Yeah.
White Hat, Lelouch, I see you down there. Butthead, welcome to the space. Harmon Ostal, awesome. Glad you could be here. Peace Ants, that's me. That's me getting a YouTube stream going. So yeah, we're rocking the YouTube live stream.
Am I the only one in the entire universe that is actually hyped about the Indiana Jones movie?
I'm pretty like I saw it and I was intrigued. I was very intrigued.
Nobody else. I haven't heard a single person talk about it. I'm literally the only person I know, and I've been on. I'm sure Boyd had seen it quite a few times now, but I'm normally not hyped for a movie, but I'm pretty hyped for this movie.
When's it coming out?
The 30th, is that Friday? Yeah, the 30th. I think.
Looking like it, yeah. Oh, okay, all right. That's some news right there.
Definitely. Tabasco, how you doing over there?
I think I'm doing pretty good. Is my microphone better?
You definitely sound a lot better.
Perfect. Yeah, I did another space the other day with a project called Build Up, and I didn't realize it, but the first like 5 minutes of me talking was almost like unintelligible. Like you couldn't understand what I was saying because Twitter, and it's probably the emulator that I was talking about, but Twitter distorted my voice and made it robotic and like cut it out. So it was really tough to hear me, and I had to do the same thing. I had to leave and join back. But that's the beauty of Twitter Spaces. They're not the easiest to work with.
Yeah, no, I still am not able to get myself and Affirmation up as co-hosts in this space. So it's I don't know. It's kind of making me feel silly. Yeah.
It seems I don't know if it's certain times of the day or if it's just it's just sporadic, but there's just so many bugs in Twitter Spaces at the moment. So maybe we should, tag Elon Musk in it, and he'll call us right now and get it fixed.
We'd have them fix our space today. Yeah, it was. Twitter Spaces have always been like since their inception almost. Which I don't know when that was. Maybe a year ago, year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. I don't know. But since they basically came out, it's always been the disconnects, and you can't get anybody up a speaker, and nobody's there's some issues sometimes where, and this happened in one of my previous spaces, where random people can't hear other speakers. It's if that was a bug in the space, and for example, affirmation wouldn't be able to hear me, but the host would, or whatever. I mean, it's super weird how they do it. Luckily, I think we've had minimal issues so far, so we're we're a little bit lucky here.
Crossing fingers that holds through. And I can hear you okay now. So I guess let's just go ahead. Should we get started on the intro and disclaimer affirmation?
Yeah, it's that time. Go ahead and jump it off, and I'll finish it off.
All right, great. Sounds good. So first of all, welcome to White Hat DAO's community space. Today, we're joined by Tabasco. He's the developer relations lead at Chainstack. And at White Hat DAO, we're focused on safety and security aspects of platforms, particularly public good services. We strive to provide technical support and facilitate security integration for projects from various blockchains. Tabasco comes from Chainstack, a platform that empowers Web3 innovation with its robust infrastructure. Chainstack is versatile, supporting a wide array of blockchain protocols such as Ethereum, Polygon, BNB, Smart Chain, and more. It's a go-to business of all sizes for building, running, and scaling blockchain applications. In the space, Tabasco will share insights on Chainstack's features and how it caters to both flexibility and security in deploying blockchain networks. Stay tuned for an informative session. And this is a open discussion. So if you do have any questions, feel free to come up and ask, and we can dive deep. Go ahead.
Well,
Matthew, thank you.
Well, we should. All right, let me finish it up, Raj. So before we begin, we just want to make sure that we give out our disclaimer. So the information shared in this Twitter space is for informational purposes only, should not be considered as investment advice or recommendations. Investing in project carries risk, and you should conduct your own research before making any investment decisions. We are not responsible for any financial losses or damages resulting from your investment choices. This session is being recorded, and by participating, you consent to the recording. Please seek professional advice before making any investment decisions, and also, if anybody can, retweet, follow White Hat DAO, follow Raj, follow Affirmation, and this helps out with the algorithms. So on that note, we'll go ahead and dive in, and I'm really looking forward to hearing everything you have to say, Tabasco. So, Raj, you can go ahead and kick it off.
Thanks, Matthew. That's awesome. And maybe we did kind of get into it a little bit already, but maybe for just to kind of officially get it started, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into blockchain tech, and then I guess to Chainstack.
For sure. Yeah. So my name is Tabasco. My real name is Ethan. Tabasco is just my online alias. I've been in the Web3 space for I guess about 3 years now. I originally joined in kind of 2020, 2021. I was attracted by the upward movements of the markets at that time. That was with Dogecoin, and soon after that was Bitcoin and Ethereum. But very quickly as I got into the space and started exploring it, and actually when I found protocols like Harmony and Solana, I very quickly became more fascinated with the technology than the profit potential of altcoins and the market. Which that kind of fascination with the technology eventually led me to learning Web3 development. I did this kind of just self-taught. I learned a bunch of different programming languages, and eventually I wanted to start my own project. Right? I don't know why. I think I just wanted something to do, and I identified a problem within the. At that time, it was actually the Harmony ecosystem, but really the larger Web3 ecosystem. And I solved that problem I identified, which was lack of community connection with the blockchain. I solved that with a project called Amity DeFi, which was a Discord bot that essentially gave you a full MetaMask wallet on Discord. So I did that for a while, and it took me about a year to create that application. After working with that, creating that, going through the motions of learning how the technology works, and a big part of Amity was also the community aspect. So engaging with the community and talking to a lot of developers. So I did that for about a year, maybe a year and a half, and then I started applying to jobs in Web3, and that's when I got a job at Chainstack. This is probably in I think my first day was June 1st, 2022. So I've been there for a little bit over a year now, about a year and a month. I originally joined as a developer relations manager, and I now lead developer relations here at Chainstack. And for anybody listening, either here or back to the recording, I also have a very long, about an hour podcast with Crypto Jobs List, which is a big jobs board for Web3 and for cryptocurrency. And I talk about that aspect, the aspect of getting into Web3 and kind of how that went on that podcast. So definitely, if you want to hear a little bit more about that whole bit, then that's the place to do it.
Hey, Tabasco, could you just go ahead and if you have a link for that, can you post it into the group chat? That'd be great.
I sure can. Let me grab that.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
That's exactly what I was thinking. But yeah, that's great. And I have noticed, have you always been doing, is the podcast a new thing? And I noticed like you're doing videos like of you. That's pretty rare to see people doxing themselves in this space. So was that a recent thing or have you been kind of making videos with yourself?
It is a recent thing. When I first joined Chainstack, I wanted to, originally, I didn't even want my name to come out. I actually wanted to remain anonymous as Tabasco. I didn't even want people to know that my name was Ethan. But then, I realized that working for a large company like Chainstack, that was going to be impossible because Chainstack is, we have 80 people. So just through the processes and the way that we announce things, and I would have had to put a lot of effort into staying anonymous. And at the end of the day, I didn't care too much about that, when I thought about it. So I decided to basically fully dox myself. I have my full name out there and everything about me, my face, of course, everywhere. I don't really have a big problem with it. I do still, to use my my alias Tabasco because that's how most people know me. But you can find my real name pretty easily. I think starting the video podcast though and the video content, we have our own podcast series on Chainstack, and we also have, I think I've probably done 3 or 4 video podcasts on other organizations' channels over the past few months, a few weeks even. And this is just because, I didn't really have many opportunities to do that. And just recently I started kind of getting an influx of ability to do these video content pieces. So I realized, my face is already out there. It's my profile picture on LinkedIn and on Twitter. So why not? I usually find that content with somebody's face is usually more engaging than voice only content. Because it just allows you to connect with the speaker and the poster a little bit more than, if you were just to post a clip of your voice. And I found that actually reflects an engagement. The posts that include my face and anything past just me talking usually do better on average than the posts that don't. So let me grab that link here real quick and I will throw that into our group chat to the podcast I was talking about.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's super interesting. It's I kind of came through kind of loose with my identity, so I felt kind of doxxed just kind of from the start, and so I kind of just rolled with it. But that's really interesting how your job kind of forced you to kind of dox yourself in a way, in a little bit.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad thing. And in Web2, like Web3 isn't. There's some industries in which you probably want to be doxxed, but Web3 is largely benevolent in terms of there's not that many like bad actors. So I feel pretty safe generally. Having my face out there and having my name out there. And I think the trend of like extreme anonymity in Web3 is on a downtrend. Like, I see very few people today that are strictly anonymous. They're either half doxed, like, their first name or their face, or anybody really, like, everybody that works for a major company, whether it's Chainstack or, any company with like a significant amount of employees and reach within the community, they're all fully doxed. So it's becoming an industry standard as kind of the space corporatizes and expands.
Dang, yeah, that's like super interesting angle, and yeah, cool. And yeah, it's cool to see you see your face, because a lot of times we're just icons talking to each other. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So yeah, affirmation. What's up?
No, that is actually a pretty cool thing. You're 100% right. I have so much interaction with people in this space, and sometimes we talk for countless hours, and I couldn't tell you what the individual looks like, what their actual name is. Like, I feel like we're like really good friends, but we don't know anything about each other. So having that intimacy of seeing somebody's face is definitely valuable in that aspect.
For sure, it's a game changer, and it's actually, there's kind of levels to it, and where it's like, you can start with anonymity, right? Where if you're talking to icons and you're chatting with somebody on Discord and you have their NFT profile picture, and then it goes up a level when like you maybe know their name, and it goes up another level where like now you have like face-to-face Zoom calls or whatever, and I kind of reached that level, like Zoom calls and being comfortable with that, right? Like being on Zoom and like connecting with people that way. Once I joined Chainstack, that's kind of when I became comfortable with that. I wasn't very comfortable with that before, but I was kind of, I decided to. It was a commitment I had to make, wanting to work full time in Web3. And then the extra level onto that, which is totally different, actually, is in-person interaction with people in the space that you either originally meet anonymously, or maybe this kind of somewhat doxed state that a lot of people are in Web3. And I first experienced this in December last year, where I was flown out to Turkey, Istanbul, Turkey, with the full Chainstack team. I think at that point we had maybe 90 people out there. And I met everybody that I've been working with, for the past 6 to 8 months, online, virtually over Zoom, and it's a totally different experience. Same thing with going to any major crypto event. I've been to ETH Denver, stuff like that. Meeting people and connecting with people in person is a totally different type of interaction. Like I met with at ETH Denver, I met with Flu. I'm sure you guys are familiar with him from the Harmony community.
Oh, you met him? Okay.
Yeah, I got to see him IRL, and some of the people from Fandora, like the old Harmony core team guys, as well as a number of like community members that I had already known for a year plus online. And it's pretty surreal. It's dope. I definitely recommend it if an event happens near any of you guys.
That brings something to mind. Like, and I got a question, Raj. When we gonna meet, man?
What state are you in again? I mean, yeah, we're far, man. Aren't we? We're pretty far away.
I feel like we have so much conversation. We participate. We do almost so many things together, and we've had face-to-face conversations. That'd definitely be a cool experience. You just got me thinking about that, Tabasco. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to rug the space.
No, it's good. It's worth it. It's dope.
Yeah, I guess the exhibits, or the what do you call it now? Like ETH Denver or something like that. That's a good place to kind of meet up with everyone. Kind of just say, hey, you going? You going?
Yeah, and Denver, when they first announced that, hey, we're doing ETH Denver, I was always kind of, I didn't know why they chose Denver. Like, why not make it, I don't know, East San Francisco or like somewhere that's nicer. But I live here in Colorado, about 30 minutes from Denver, so it's perfect for me because I just drove down there every day. But Denver is like, not the nicest city in the world. It's not very pretty. It's like any other major city, you can barely even see the mountains. So it's something special. But I realized that they chose Denver because it's really cheap to fly to the Denver International Airport, because it's a sort of hub spot for international flights, right? So most people do connections in Denver and stuff like that. So flying even internationally from somewhere like Germany or whatever to Denver is super, super cheap, especially if you're in the United States. It's like one of the cheapest flights is to Denver because there's so many of them. And it's such like a large flight spot. So I think, I'm not sure, I'd assume ETH Denver 2024 will be in February, March, like it was this year. So maybe I'll see some of you guys down there.
Really hope so. That'd be awesome, man.
Maybe that's when we meet. Affirmation.
Yeah, we're sorry, Raj, man. We can't share a room though, bro.
Oh, all right. No, not a big deal.
Yeah, that was
anyway.
Oh, you're good. In Turkey, that was with Chainstack. It was like there was a whole room sharing thing, and unfortunately, I wasn't a part of that initiative. But if you can, for any event, if you can get your own hotel room, then that's a big plus. Much easier than sharing with somebody.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
So why don't we dive a little bit into Chainstack a little bit, and maybe just like talk about what is the process to deploying a blockchain node on using Chainstack?
Yeah, so a big part of our process and why developers choose Chainstack fundamentally is because deploying a node, getting a node ready, right? I guess first, for some context, blockchain nodes and RPC nodes lie at the foundation of every decentralized application. So everything that you use, right? Every DEX, every game, Web3 game, any like messaging social protocol. I mean, everything that you do is routed and sourced through an RPC node. So it's important that this RPC node is a few things. Number one, it needs to be super fast, right? The speed of an RPC node a lot of times is going to be a big choke point for UX and usability of an application. If your RPC node is really slow and inconsistent, then your users will find it difficult to use your application effectively. Your RPC node also needs to be customizable. It needs to fit potentially unique use cases, and it needs to be affordable, right? So you can't charge $1 million for an RPC node. It needs to be something that is affordable so that small developers and enterprises can leverage high quality technology all kind of in the same way. And I guess the other thing, kind of like what you mentioned, is that they need to be easy to launch, easy to manage. This way, they're as accessible as possible. Because what you want in Web3 is that you want innovation from a variety of sources. So you want people, individual developers that are just now learning. You want them to be able to build efficient applications. You also want people like Trust Wallet and CoinGecko. Both are customers of ours. You want them to be able to leverage the same high quality infrastructure to build powerful applications. So usability and performance and affordability are all really important things to us. So the process of spinning up and down on Chainstack is really easy to kind of fit in with those key value propositions. So when you go to Chainstack and you sign up, you create an account, it's as simple as you go to a dashboard, you create a project. So in this case, let's say we're creating a game. So we just call it game. And then you create a network. So you choose, what chain do I want to create a node on, right? Let's say you want an Ethereum node that's located in a specific place. So you click on Ethereum, you choose Ethereum mainnet, then you say, it'll ask you what location you want to deploy it in, on what cloud provider. So you can say, onto the Chainstack UI, you can say, I want, an Ethereum node in AWS in Ashburn, United States, right? Or you can say, I want it on Microsoft Azure in London, or I want it on Google Cloud in Singapore. Or I want this node to be global. So I want this to be globally distributed. I want this to automatically route to the closest query. So these things make it super easy to deploy a complicated node, right? So it's, those few steps. You deploy a node, you choose your configuration options, chain, mainnet, testnet, et cetera. Location, do you want it to be archival? Do you want it to be dedicated? Do you want it to be elastic? And then you just click deploy, and then it syncs with the blockchain. It syncs with, the node itself syncs, and then it'll give you an endpoint. You take that endpoint, you plug it into your application, and now you have enterprise grade, essentially, RPC node powering the backend of your application.
So it's like that quick and easily deployable?
Yeah, it usually takes, I'd say, like from the dashboard to having an endpoint in your application, maybe about 5 minutes. If you're deploying a global node, it could take, less than 30 seconds.
Wow. So I'm not as technical as Raj. Raj is the technical guy. He's the genius behind this space. So
I wouldn't say genius.
deploying this, I guess we call it a node. Is that essentially what it's called?
Yeah, node, RPC endpoint. All these things are a little bit interchangeable.
The people deploying them, what is the reward for running an RPC node?
So, when you deploy an RPC node on Chainstack, it's being deployed on our servers, so servers that we host, servers that we maintain. So, cloud provider servers. So, we're creating an instance on AWS, for example, and then deploying your node. If it's a dedicated node, we create one from scratch, basically, and we deploy that for you. If it's an Elastic node, we give you a piece of a larger node and get really complicated. But essentially, when you deploy something on Chainstack, it's being ran by Chainstack. And what we do actually is that for individual developers, people that just want one node to use in their application for one chain, they can leverage it for free on Chainstack. So we get nothing from it. And they can 100% for free go to Chainstack, deploy a node, and plug it in their application, and make 3 million requests to it a month for zero charge. And this, of course, is a big help to the community because a lot of people don't have $50 a month, $100 a month to pay towards subscriptions, right? Whether it's for Chainstack or whatever other provider. So having an option that developers can leverage for free is really important. But also for larger clients, for people who want more chains, they want more endpoints, they want more options, they want to be able to deploy dedicated nodes, they want to get archival data. That's when they can go and pay for plans, and that's where we have that incentive to run these nodes for developers. So you can go to $50 a month, you can go to $350 a month, and even $1,000 a month for enterprise level subscriptions. And that's when you get the super advanced, super robust configurations and potential that large enterprises like your Trust wallets and CoinGecko and Layer 0 stuff like this. Those organizations, they need like those extra configuration options, and that's where our incentive is.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rob.
That's that's like you're getting me all excited about Chainstack. Just all the tooling and literally like how easy it is. You're not exaggerating. It's like you log in and then you press a button, and then it's like you're like Elastic or Inelastic, and then it's done. You create a node, and then you get some endpoints you can actually connect your MetaMask to it, and it's pretty snazzy. So something like maybe we can get into the security issue you had a little bit, if you're able to get into that at all, and maybe just I know Chainstack supports a lot of chains. So how do you manage security across chains like that?
Yeah, so I guess we can start quickly with the security issue, which is pretty interesting. Sorry, I don't know if there's some background noise. There's a little bit in real life, but I apologize if there's any noise on my microphone. But yeah, so the security issue is actually something that we talked about on our recent podcast. So we started these podcasts at Chainstack called FAFO and Chill. We've done 3 of them at this point. I was in the first one and I was in the most recent one. The most recent one is when we talked about the security issue. So for some context, a few weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago now, we released a faucet. Right? So a faucet, for the non-technical people in here, is something that developers leverage on testnets, right? So testnets are basically places like test blockchains to deploy applications on, to transfer funds on, to basically test a blockchain without using real money. So testnets have faucets, right? They have things that you go to this website, you put in your wallet address, and it gives you free testnet funds, right? In this case, it's Ethereum. So we launched a faucet that for Sepolia and Goerli testnet Ethereum. Once you go to it, you put in your Chainstack API key, and you put in your wallet address, and then it sends you 0.5 Ethereum to that address that you can use for contract deployments and for interacting with the testnet, right? For testing your development stuff, your applications. So it took us a long time to build this. We finally released it a few weeks ago, and it went really well for the first few days, for the first few weeks, right? We got a lot of great traffic to it. People joined the platform as a result of it, and we were very happy with it. But all of a sudden, last week I was on vacation. I went up to Canada and did some hiking. I get a message, and it was from one of my coworkers, and he says, our faucet's been hacked. Our faucet's been exploited, which in this case means that somebody created a bunch of spam accounts on Chainstack, and they had all these scripts running that essentially allowed them to drain the entire faucet. So they took a few thousand testnet Ethereum, and in this case it was Goerli testnet Ethereum, and stole it from our faucet through kind of complicated account creation and repeat querying with new addresses and stuff like that. So within just like an hour, basically, we had the entire faucet drained, and we didn't even know until like a day later. And I believe that testnet Ethereum, the testnet Ethereum is generally worthless, but Goerli Ethereum in specific has some worth because it's kind of rare. So I believe the amount that they stole was equivalent to about $250 if you were to sell it through a bridge or something like that. Which, I mean, that's not that much money, but it was interesting to see because we had built this application and we weren't expecting it to get breached at all, right? We're just like, people will use it. We were expecting that, the fact that you have to sign up to the Chainstack platform before you can query the faucet would be like prevention enough to stop spam attacks. But we were wrong, and it was an interesting learning experience. And of course, it wasn't detrimental to like our operations. We have a lot more tested Ethereum, but the way that we saw it was more of a learning experience, and it was like this highlights the importance of like having a robust security solution before you release something, right? So before you take the step to release something to the public and advertise it, you need to make sure that it's secure, which is something that we didn't. We made too many assumptions in that regard, that it was already secure without doing additional research and spending additional time on it. So over the past few days, myself and some of my coworkers, we came up with a kind of new and interesting security solution that will, in theory, keep the faucet very secure from any further attacks of that nature. I can't maybe talk briefly about it later, but it was a very complicated method of securing it. So we fixed it, but the idea is that the thing that we learned from this primarily is that when you're building an application and you're going to launch something that people are going to use, especially something that handles money, even if it's something worthless like testnet Ethereum, anything that holds any value as little as $50, you need to take proper precautions to secure it as much as possible. So you need to put it through audits, you need to spend time on security, and you need to get feedback from people, test things, because while $250 for us isn't that big of a deal, especially because we have a lot more testnet Ethereum already. If you're an individual developer and you launch that and then it gets drained, that could be a big problem. So, the idea there was that, highlighting the importance of security. And in that podcast that I mentioned, FAFO and Chill, we talk more about the part of it where it's like, things like these are prevented through collaboration with people. So collaboration with security professionals, collaboration with other developers, with users. If we were to take the code of this faucet and throw it around, maybe security auditors or whatever, and developers in the security space, so we probably could have figured out that this could have been a problem before it happened. So, I think I posted a clip about this on LinkedIn today. But when you're building an application in Web3 as a developer, one of the most important things is people, right? So leveraging people in your network, leveraging people in the community to get feedback on an application, to get feedback on security, all these things, right? To hear their opinions, to hear their thoughts on what you're building. Because if we would have done that in this case, if we would have spent more effort on that, we could have prevented it. So that's kind of the the underlying lesson that we learned from that whole experience.
Hey, 100%. And that feedback loop is something that it has to be worked on. And I have to admit, like me myself, I'm working on like this DApp, and I admit I haven't really, like, it's secure to the point where it seems to work, and I've used Open Zeppelin contracts, but there's not been formal auditing or anything on it. So what I'm really counting on is the beta testers and kind of getting that going and getting that feedback so I can see, what's wrong. And so, yeah, when it does go like to a broader audience, you don't run into those security issues. But yeah, that's a really excellent point that we should emphasize is think about security and put time and effort into it before you deploy these whatever you're planning on deploying, if it's using smart contracts or something like that, because the consequences could be drastic. And yeah, no need to take unnecessary risks, but at the same time, sometimes you just got to get a product out there. So it's kind of a balancing act, I suppose.
Yeah, it's all cost benefit, right? It's if your application handles a lot of money, then definitely taking the time to run it through an audit or just get feedback from people about the level of security and the security practices that you're taking or the lack thereof is invaluable. If you're releasing something that handles either no money or very little money, then it's probably something that you need to worry less about. But every decision when you're building an application, it's all cost benefit. It's how much time is it going to take me? What's the return of taking this time to do this? And for most applications, I'd say taking the time to focus on security and get feedback from other people, whether it's an auditor that you're paying or whether it's an individual, usually it pays off. Of course, unless you're building like something that doesn't handle money, but that's usually with cryptocurrency. It's usually less happens less often than the ulterior.
Yeah, saying all that, I just want to, being that this is White Hat DAO actually does conduct audits as well. That is a service they provide. So, being that this is a space, I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole process of doing your own research and, when you're looking at projects, that's another thing White Hat tries to do, is support that whole process by providing safety rating, which aggregates a lot of important information on different projects. So yeah, thanks Affirmation for bringing that up. That's an excellent point. So yeah, no, that's super interesting. So thanks for getting into the whole I didn't hear you say the word, but would that be called a Sybil attack?
Potentially. I'm not super familiar with cybersecurity terms. I'm not an auditor or anything. But from my limited knowledge, I'd say, potentially, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So from my understanding, a Sybil attack is when you have a lot of accounts just pretending to be, different accounts when it's just one person. So I think, yeah, it kind of fits into that. And Sybil attacks is one of the, it's one of the problems that has been it's an issue across a lot of the Web3 space. And I don't think there's been a super solid solution for that. So whatever you're working on, that's super exciting. Yeah, I don't know if you can dive into any of that, but if you have any insights on I don't know, how to prevent Sybil attacks, I'm all ears for that.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're on the nose with that definition. I did a quick refresher, and it's the foundation of this attack was a single person creating multiple identities, using a single system to emulate multiple systems, especially when it comes to account creation, IP address querying, stuff like that. The way that we did it, I have to be careful about the terms that I use. I'm sure, of course, I trust everybody here, but this is being recorded, so it's, the idea of a big part of the solution is that you don't know how it works, which is a part of its security. But in spirit, basically what it does is that, I guess this analogy is what I used on a recent podcast, but the analogy was, if you're, well, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. Right now, the temporary patch that we have for the faucet is requiring a mainnet balance check for everybody that does a request. So if you want test in Ethereum, you need a minimum balance on mainnet to gather that test in Ethereum. And this is basically a foolproof method in theory, that's prevented all further attacks up to this point, because when you need $5 of mainnet Ethereum on every account that you're trying to replicate identity on, essentially, to pull test in Ethereum out, it becomes very unprofitable very quickly. But the issue with the solution, with just requiring a mainnet balance account, a mainnet balance on the account that's that wallet address is being queried on the faucet. The issue is that it limits usage of the faucet, right? So this means that anybody that doesn't have a mainnet balance, which is a lot of people, including myself on most of my wallets, you can't use the faucet, right? This is a big problem. This means that maybe half, less than that, of the people that click on our faucet and try to use it won't be able to. So we needed to come up with a solution that stopped attacks, that prevented spam in this case, right? This sort of Sybil attack, like you mentioned, and did that without restricting usage, right? So this is a difficult problem, because it's like, well, how do you know if an anonymous wallet address on the blockchain is legitimate or not? How do you know if it's spam or not? So the solution that we came up with is akin to the analogy that I was getting into earlier, which is that the analogy is this. So if you are like a high value person, right? You wear a bulletproof vest, right? If you're the president or something, or whoever, a celebrity, maybe you wear a bulletproof vest when you're expecting to be shot, right? So if you're going to like a dangerous place and you wear one because you think that you might be a target, right? But you don't wear it to Starbucks or to Walmart because you're not expecting to get shot, right? So this is the core of what we're doing here in terms of our solution, right? Where it's, well, you only need extreme measures. You only need extreme protection when you think you need extreme protection, right? There's a lot of cases in which it's ridiculous to wear a bulletproof vest, walking around your neighborhood, because the chance of anything happening is almost zero, right? So this is the core of what we did here, in that we only require mainnet balance checks when we believe there to be a spam attack happening. Now, the part that I can't say is how we qualify that, how we know when there's a spam attack happening or know when there's suspicious activity. But that's at the center of our solution here, is that, before, all we required was, the first iteration was you just need an account in Chainstack, and there's no spam protection, there's no balance checks. You just create an account, get your API key, put in your wallet address, and grab your funds. And you can do that every 24 hours. And then the way this guy got around it was just by creating a bunch of Chainstack accounts, and then creating a bunch of wallets and querying it all with, I assume, different virtual machines and IP addresses and stuff like that to get around our rate limit. But anyways, that was iteration number one. That failed, of course, in this case. Number two was I call it indiscriminate mainnet balance checks. So regardless of who you are, regardless of the state of the faucet, etc., you are subject to a requirement of a minimum mainnet balance on Ethereum. Right? In this case, it's about $5. So that was number two. The issue with that is that it restricts usage of the faucet. Number three, which is what I just mentioned, is discriminate mainnet balance checks. So the balance check only occurs on transactions, on requests that we think potentially might be spam, right? The faucet is in the state of being spammed. So that's the solution that we came up with, and we're currently in the process of implementing it. And we think it'll be a pretty strong contender to not limit usage, but also prevent any further attacks of the same nature that we experienced recently.
That's fantastic. Okay. Yeah, no, very cool. I like how you kind of dialed it in, right? You went one way and then you kind of went the other, and then, okay, now you're kind of hybridizing it. And You're going to look for the mainnet balances on particular suspicious activity. And yeah, that's a really cool solution to a very hard problem. So props to you, man. That's great. You did so for maybe I kind of want to bring in wallets a little bit into the conversation. So I'm kind of curious for maybe for yourself. I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about, you know, how you store your funds, but do you store your funds? Feel free to pass on the question if you want, via cold storage, multi-sig, or hot wallets. How do you like to organize and store your funds?
Yeah, you know, it's a little bit embarrassing because I created Amity DeFi, right, which was a wallet that you know very securely stores funds, and I spent all this time learning about cybersecurity and securing different aspects of storage to, you know, securely create wallets, stuff like that, through, you know, very complicated methods. But my own wallet, you know, that I had been using for a long time. First of all, I don't keep that much money on chain or even in exchanges. I have very little in Web3 in general. But the money that I did have, that I used primarily for things like development and for testing, was on this one wallet. And what ended up happening is that I pushed, I think it was either a GitHub commit or some other public code that had my personal private key in it, because I use it for testing all the time, right? I didn't have a separate wallet for testing. I should have. But that main wallet had maybe $30 across all chains, and it had very, very little money. But I checked it, you know, it was probably January of this year, and it was like, you know, wow, this all the money got drained. Somebody, I'm sure, scraped the private key, and then you know, either manually or automatically took everything, which is interesting. It was interesting to see that happen. And I was like, as somebody who created an entire wallet that's held up security for multiple years, I couldn't, you know, secure my own personal wallet. It was a very small issue. Definitely, if you're a user, you don't have to worry about ever pushing your private key in a code repository. But if you're a developer, then, you know, make sure that you don't have like exposed environment and variables or anything before you publish something publicly. So the way that I keep most of my small amount of Web3, you know, funds, some of it's through a ledger. It's, you know, one of the best ways to do it. It's through a ledger that I almost never touch. I have it in the safe. You know, I don't do anything with it. But even then, it has like almost nothing in it. I have a few personal wallets that maybe have $30, $40 total. But really, you know, in my opinion, probably one of the best ways is just getting a hardware wallet. But the important thing with a hardware wallet is that you don't use it, right? This is the whole point of cold storage. And the reason why a lot of people get their hardware wallets breached is because they use them. So they plug it into their computer, and then they use it to sign transactions all the time. They use it as like their hot wallet, which defeats the whole point, right? There's no point of a cold wallet if you're going to use it for all of your transactions and all of your swaps and all of your contract interactions and your you know, fund approvals and contract approvals, stuff like that, because that's how you lose your money. So my personal advice, of course, you know, maybe you don't want to take advice to the guy that pushed his private key to GitHub, but would be to get a ledger and store it somewhere secure, physically secure, and don't use it, right? Put the money that you want in there and just leave it, forget about it. And then if you ever want to sell that money or unstake it or stake it or whatever, then you can use it for a limited amount of transactions. But really, the security that you get from a ledger is through its inactivity, through the fact that it's largely offline, sitting in a physical piece of hardware. Physical, and I'll say this, physical key storage, right, is probably one of the best security practices you can do, because anything connected to the internet has the possibility of being breached, right? So any application that you're building, whatever it may be, storing things physically, right, especially something like a ledger that holds a cryptocurrency, will always be one of the best things that you could do, because then at that point, you're just, you know, the only way that it can get, like a key for, in this case, can get stolen is through, you know, the ledger is all complicated, but for most cases, it's just like physical stealing of a key or something like that, which is rare. So, you know, buying a ledger, storing it somewhere secure is probably the best route that you can go.
Well, I have to ask, what do you think of the security update with Ledger with the, being able to export the private key in 3 different, encrypted shards or something, but, it still has the ability to export the private key with that update?
That was an interesting news story that came out recently. And at first and even now, I thought it was like, you know, it's a little bit, you know, I thought it was kind of overblown slightly, because any wallet that's managed, right? Any hardware wallet, any managed wallet, even self-custodial wallets like MetaMask, your private key is stored, right? And it has to be used. It has to be used to sign transactions. It has to be accessed, which is difficult for Web3, right? Because, well, how do you access a private key securely? And how do you prevent people from saying the key? How do you prevent people from, whatever, from, decrypting it and using it and stealing funds? And Ledger, I'd say Ledger is somewhat trustless because, if they wanted to steal a key, for example, then I guess they technically could if they, deployed a firmware update that stole it anytime you connect to the internet or whatever. But in reality, like, I think if you're not using your Ledger and you're not downloading updates and you're not doing whatever, then you're not going to have your funds magically stolen by Ledger. I think that's kind of a silly notion that I saw a lot pop up during that news story. People were scared that their funds were going to pop off their Ledger, and I think that's unrealistic. But it is important that I think a big issue with Web3 at the moment is the fact that like we need to be having this conversation about stuff like this. It's like if you go to a person and say, how do you and you try to teach them how to store funds in Web3, and you go to them and you say, yeah, you need to buy this physical device, don't download any updates off of it, store it in a fireproof safe, download or write down the seed phrase and store it on a piece of metal somewhere safe. And I mean, these are things that are ridiculous to most people. And I think unless you have a very significant amount of money, right, then you probably don't need to do that. As long as you're just doing good practices and being mindful of what you do with your keys and your seed phrase and the things that you connect to. But in general, I still have confidence in my Ledger at least, and they're I doubt that they'll do anything with the private key, and if they did, it'd be pretty obvious in my opinion for most people.
Yeah, definitely. That's great analysis there. I'm kind of with you there. Like, I do keep up with the updates. Like that, it is kind of one of the annoying parts of Ledger is like every time I use it or use the Ledger Live app, there's always an update. So that is one of the things I do. Maybe I should think about not doing. But yeah, no, it's I guess there is the idea that once you buy this thing, it's like you're good to go. You don't have any worries, but kind of this whole update situation kind of reminded everyone that, hey, you are like you are trusting companies to an extent when they are doing firmware updates and stuff like that. So yeah, we have to trust people a lot more than maybe if you really thought about it, you'd be comfortable with. But I think that's just the nature of how things are, I suppose, if you want to get a little philosophical.
Yeah, Web3 is an interesting space because of the in Web2 you have to be going out of your way to make bad decisions to get to be a victim of a security breach. You have to download a bad application. You need to click on a bad website and give it access to whatever. I mean, Web2 has locked a lot of the like security, like antiviruses and different things built into your operating system. They've locked it down because these are things that when you have normal people using it, you can't expect them to stay up to date with Web2 backend infrastructure and being super like knowing everything and making good decisions, because most people won't, especially if they aren't technically savvy. And Web3 is the opposite of that, in that everything is self-custodial, everything is individual. So right now, as the space stands, you do have to be that careful, right? You have to have some technical knowledge and ability to prevent connecting to a bad website, prevent approving something that might be bad that could be abstracted. Not downloading a ledger firmware update, as silly as it sounds, is a real threat at some points. If the company would have says to go AWOL or whatever, but of course it's very unlikely in my opinion. But still, it's a big part of Web3 is maintaining security, and I think, in my opinion, as we start progressing and the ecosystem matures, and we have better applications, as we focus on consumers, we'll find ways to abstract a lot of these security features, a lot of the heavy lifting of staying as secure as possible and not getting funds stolen. For normal consumers, a lot of these things will be abstracted behind innovative wallet solutions and stuff like that, where hopefully you won't have to worry about it, right? You can just use Web3, use this technology, send transactions, interact with things without having to constantly worry, is what I'm interacting with, is it malicious? Am I signing a bad transaction? Did my private key get leaked somewhere? What's happening with my seed phrase? I mean, these are things that are exclusive to Web3 in terms of things that you worry about. So I'm of the opinion that these are very much temporary issues, and they'll be solved for the majority of people over the next few years as we start expanding on Web3 security and making it a little bit more streamlined.
I guess my my question is a little more geared towards a different direction. With recent status of the market in general, Chainstack, how are you guys seeing a decline in onboarding with everything going on in Web3 at the moment? Are projects still onboarding?
We aren't really, to be completely honest. And this is actually a good question because over the past 6 months, I've been working on an application that essentially scrapes GitHub. So it looks through GitHub, it looks through a bunch of repositories, and it does a lot of complicated logic. And what you get out of this application is that you get a number of developers that are active in the ecosystem, a number of people that are contributing to projects in the space. And I'm actually going to be releasing this application soon, either this week or next week, where basically it's like a very easy dashboard. You can see this chain has this many contributors in the past 30 days. You can see every repository, the link to every repository, and so on. And the numbers look really good. They're not bad at all. And there's not much downtrend either. I think, the market's going down, and some of the bad news with the SEC makes things sound worse than they are. But in reality, when you take a step back and just look at developers and look at people that are building applications, there isn't much of a decline. There's actually a lot of people that are being onboarded into the space and that are learning the technology and learning how to create applications. And we're seeing a lot of new developers come in, as well as there isn't a huge amount of churn with existing developers. So the numbers that I've been seeing over the past few months, really within ecosystems like Solana, within ecosystems like Avalanche and Arbitrum, is that the number of contributors to projects that are on that chain has been pretty stable. It hasn't gone down. It hasn't gone up a ton because, of course, we're not in great market conditions. But I'm pretty happy with the numbers that I've seen over there. And on the Chainstack side of things, of course, we haven't seen a big drop either. We've been seeing consistently existing developers onboarding, new developers onboarding, and people generally being excited about exploring the space and creating useful applications.
Yeah, that's kind of coincided with what I'm seeing as well. I can recall previous bear markets, and it seemed like in previous bear markets, people were running from the space, but it seems like in this market, the devs that are substantiated in the space already are just putting their heads down and continually building. You got a guy like Raj that's learning, how to code, on his own. So that's pretty admirable. Definitely everything you said coincides with what I see.
Heck yeah. And I mean, that's the keep your head down build. People, when I talk to people, they're like, oh, you're into crypto. It's not such a great time for crypto. And I'm just thinking, no, it feels like a great time for crypto because there's not as much noise, I guess. You can really get down to business and collaborate with people who are serious about, making something substantial. So yeah, that's a great sentiment. So in terms of milestones and achievements, has Chainstack achieved any notable milestones or achievements recently, or anything worth mentioning?
Yeah, for sure. I think I mentioned this earlier, but we have a pretty significant team, about 80 people now, maybe a little bit less, like 75-ish. So we have a very large team of product people, of developer experience, of engineers, where we're always building new solutions and new things that developers can leverage to create exciting applications. What we want to do is expand the potential and the possibilities of things that can be built in Web3. So we've done this with a few products recently that we've launched over the past few weeks, over the past few days, and over the past few months. The most recent one is a global Elastic node. So I mentioned this briefly at the beginning, but previously on Chainstack, to launch a node, you needed to choose a region, right? Which is fine because, of course, that's a big part of customizability and it's great. But, you choose the United States, a certain part of the United States. Maybe you choose Singapore or London or Amsterdam or whatever. And this is great, but we wanted a solution that gave people the opportunity to create a node, have it be distributed globally. So have basically this endpoint, when you query it, it chooses a location that's closest to you. It chooses a node that's closest to you. And then through that, it'll allow us to do things like have lower response times, have the node sync instantly, basically, rather than previously when you deploy a node on Chainstack, if you deploy a regional node, so a node that is reliant on a certain region, what would happen is that you would have to wait, maybe 3 or 4 minutes for it to sync, for the node to be ready to use. So what we have now is with global nodes, if you choose to deploy that, it syncs instantly, right? So you choose global, it syncs like basically as soon as you click deploy, and you grab the endpoint and you deploy it into your application. And now what you get is an endpoint that routes the requester directly to the server closest to it, which means that you get very low latency, you get huge reliability, and it's much more lightweight, right? So this is a big part of our product offering that we've recently released and that we're very excited about. This is right now only for Ethereum mainnet, but we have plans to expand it to things like Polygon and whatnot soon. So the developers can, literally within 5 seconds, they can click, I want Ethereum, I want it global, I click deploy, and then right there you have an endpoint without having to wait for it to sync or anything. An endpoint that automatically routes you to the closest node in the world. So this is a really cool solution that we think it will be very useful for developers that you can actually use right now on the Ethereum mainnet. On top of this, our other largest product offering recently was subgraphs. So subgraphs are a very technical thing that I won't get into too much in this space, but essentially what subgraphs do is they allow you to achieve very specific and customizable data indexing that isn't possible through RPC nodes. So when you're calling an RPC node, there's an amount of data that you can get from it from the blockchain, but it's kind of limited. And RPC nodes are great because they allow you to connect to the blockchain, read and write, and whatnot. But they have limitations on the data that you can read directly with an RPC. So that's where solutions like subgraphs come in. So subgraphs are really cool pieces of technology that leverage the graph to essentially index and retrieve complicated Web3 data across a variety of blockchains very quickly, efficiently. And the big part of this that's important that developers enjoy is that any major piece of data that you can imagine can be done incredibly specifically and sort of like bespokely with the subgraph that you create yourself, right? So you create a subgraph, you decide the data that you want to index, you decide how you want it to be formatted, and all of these, very complicated options, and then you can deploy it, use it for your data indexing, and you can basically supercharge your application if you create an efficient and a good subgraph that gets the data that you need that maybe wasn't possible with RPC nodes. So this is something that we've released recently, and we have full subgraph hosting. So if you create a subgraph, if you build one yourself, we actually, if anybody's interested, we have a video that I posted a while ago on my Twitter, and we actually posted recently on our YouTube that goes through a 5-minute process of building a subgraph. But basically what this process does is you build it and then you deploy it, and you deploy it on Chainstack, right? So you can take your subgraph, Chainstack will host it for you, and then you can take the query URL and query it within your application and get that data. So that's the other thing that we released that's been huge. And we just recently, I think we made the announcement today, actually, that we expanded it to Arbitrum. So that's an additional chain that you can deploy it on now. So this, among a few other things, of course, the faucet, we're going to soon be releasing a full-on ChatGPT plugin that allows for some really exciting level of data manageability within Web3. On top of a few other things, we've been very much heads down building and trying our best to create as many solutions and as a diverse set of solutions as possible that developers can leverage, so that we can expand use cases and reduce friction in the process of application development.
Freaking awesome. And I was just thinking earlier, honestly, this has been a thought that's kind of come up over and over. I've kind of been just thinking about is just how important abstraction is. And at Chainstack, you guys are abstracting away a lot of the node creation process and making subgraphs and just giving developers layers of abstraction to work with, which is really what it's all about. I'm finding it's all about creating abstraction for other people, and that's where the value comes in. So it is. We have hit the hour, so I want to respect your time, Tabasco, and if you do have to go, by all means. But I'm happy to chat, a bit longer if you have anything you want to go into. Yeah,
I think first of all, you're 100% right on that abstraction piece. Abstraction at the foundation of Web3 is, in my opinion, going to be one of the driving forces of expanding Web3 to consumer adoption, right? Abstraction in the sense of making it easy to use blockchain without having to deal with things like, transactions and the complexities that comes with tracking a transaction, looking it up on Etherscan. And these are things that we take for granted usually, but are really complicated to most people. So I think abstraction, like you mentioned, will play a huge role in making wallets easier to use, making wallets more secure, so you can be more confident in using Web3 without having to worry about security and about your wallet getting breached and all these different things. Abstraction in the developer sense, right? Abstracting away layers of complexity when it comes to running a node yourself. It's very difficult and it can cost a lot of money. Or even using an API or getting this different data. These are all things that at the foundation of it, abstraction leads to increased adoption, it leads to more productivity, leads to more efficiency. So that was a really good point that you made. But other than that, I think we today touched on a lot of really good points. We talked about, of course, Chainstack and kind of the services that we do and the value that it brings to developers. We talked about security, the importance of security, and kind of our recent run-in with the reality that taking security seriously is really important. Doing audits is really important. Getting feedback is really important. Consulting with people is really important. We also talked about wallet security, right? So getting a ledger and being secure with your personal management of your keys, being careful, being cautious, preventing a breach of your wallet, and among numerous other things, the different technologies that we're working on and so on. So I think there was a pretty valuable discussion today, and hopefully everybody in the audience, everybody listening at the recording felt the same way. I guess real quick, if you want to follow me, my Twitter handle is @TabascoWeb3. I post content every single week, usually developer-facing content, so things like tutorials and threads going on certain topics within the Web3 industry. So you can follow me at TabascoWeb3. Also, for Chainstack, the company that I represent, and I am the developer relations lead for, you can follow at ChainstackHQ. We post frequent announcements and also things like threads and videos and stuff like that, that if you're a developer, you should find pretty useful.
See, that's the kind of thing that we need to do, Matt. That was beautiful, Tabasco. Yeah, definitely follow Tabasco. Check him out. He has puts out a lot of good material on things he's working on. Gives nice little summary tweet threads on different parts of Web3 and blockchain and development. So give them a follow. Check out Chainstack. Deploy your own node. It's free. Why not? We did it. Do it. It's fun. And yeah, if you're interested in being part of White Hat DAO, wait, how did you do that? How did you do that? How are you doing that, Matt? I don't understand the sound. Where's the soundboard? Okay, well, eventually I'll figure out the soundboard and life will be good. But in the meantime, if you're interested in joining White Hat, yeah, great, good timing. If you're interested in joining White Hat DAO, definitely join our Discord. Message us on Telegram if you want to collab on something or you want to do one of these spaces with us. So definitely open to collaboration. Matt, did you want to close it out?
Yeah, I just wanted to say definitely big to Tabasco. You were very informative, very detailed about what it is exactly that you do. To be quite honest, I'm not as advanced as Raj is, so